Begin to just relax your body, sitting up nice and tall. And if you like, you can look at this picture in nature and we'll listen to some nature sounds. And just take a moment to remember what it feels like for you to be close to this earth. You can imagine yourself barefoot on the earth or just in contact with nature. And remember a place in your life that you have established a deep connection with, whether it be a tree, a beach, a forest, a garden. And just take in here, just for a moment, the beauty, the sounds, the fragrance, the depth of color and texture. And just for a few moments here, allow yourself to feel the connection to the beautiful earth. And you can go ahead and flutter your eyes open if they are closed. So welcome everyone. We just had a moment to connect with nature, which this week and today kind of launches a very celebratory week that honors the earth. We have Earth Day on Thursday, and tonight's talk is all about reconnecting with our more than human world and reestablishing this loving bond that we have with her, just like a mother would with its child, or a child would with its mother. And this connection, in reestablishing this connection, we will find renewal for ourselves and for nature. And I'm sure all of you here have felt the call this year to tune to nature's pace, to slow down, and to reconnect to that which is really important in your life. I saw this quote last week, and I just thought it was so powerful. It said, "When the future is uncertain, what is important becomes very clear." And many of us have felt that reconnecting with nature was of the topmost importance. And as yogis, we know that coming home to nature is truly coming home to the self. So the closer that we get to nature, the closer we get to the self, with a capital S, like Premji says. And so I will be speaking a little bit, but I'm leading tonight's talk alongside my wonderful co-host, Brette Popper, whose journey began in 2000 after a long career in publishing. She left her position as a COO of a small publishing company and wandered into a neighborhood yoga studio where she fell in love with yoga, and she rediscovered her body after many years of living in her head. And she went on to study and become a teacher, and now she considers herself very much a student of many healing lineages and modalities. such as yogic philosophy, breathing techniques, Sanskrit, and Tai Chi. And then our second guest host here is a very special person, Prem Sadashivananda, who is a scholar of Vedantic philosophy, Hindu scripture, Sanskrit, and he's well known for giving these amazing talks. And he has a wonderful teaching style. And we have been collaborating since many lifetimes, but we rekindled, I would say, about 8 years ago. And I've kind of recruited him to come to Long Island to lead wonderful talks and trainings at the Come Together Yoga School. And he was a monk for many years. I know you all are best friends with Premji, so you all know this story very well. But we're just so grateful to have him here. And so without further ado, I would like to pass the mic over to perhaps Premji to get us started. And thank you all for being here.
Om Namah Shivaya. Om Ham Om Ganganapate Namaha Gangarabhyo Namaha Om Ayam Saraswati Namaha. Thank you so much, Sita, for introducing us here. So I'm more than delighted to be with my friends here. We're actually more than three, but tonight we're pretending to be only three. So it's Sita, Liz, and Brett, who has a wonderful spiritual name, Mahadevi. And myself, and of course there's some of you here as guests, which are also the speakers and teachers and the sharers of your own wisdom. I find these times extremely important. As Sita said, the more emergency, the more crucial something becomes, the clearer we become in our minds what we need to do. Normally, when there's a big task in front of us, it buffers our minds, and because we usually used to working only with small, range of tools, and climatic changes and renewal of Mother Earth requires the tools of all beings today on this planet Earth, as many as they have, and it requires that we also have some connection with the divine, number one, and number two, also that we have actually a love and respect for creation and all these things. I think the primary needs today, they need to be rekindled in the hearts of all beings. Now, we're not going to have all the beings rekindled, because at this very moment as we are having this talk, I'm sure that there are millions of people around in the world who could not care less about this, and it would be so happy to just destroy in the name of greed or ignorance or whatever. However, we're not going to be bound by this kind of low vibration, but we're going to make them be bound by our high vibration. I think that's kind of what we should do. We must also have a vision, and this vision is usually based on traditional values. Nevertheless, a vision being ours is also fresh and something very new, and we can use this to rekindle our own connection with the earth in a new way, and connection with each other in a new way, and then, of course, influence deliberately, consciously, or any way you can others around you. So there will have to be some, obviously, dramatic change that need to happen. I would say that at this point we have a president who seems to be willing to make some compromises and to try to actually stimulate this new step forward towards the renewable sources of energy and things like that. But for us, I would say we need to address this problem from 2 points of view. As a spiritual aspirants, and I want to first of all introduce immediately Little Lolling and Sita Incorporation. They're running this phenomenal little platform. Now it's little, eventually it's going to be bigger than the Facebook. It's called the Eco Yoga. Please sign up for it. Recommend your friends. We need this platform to grow in order to be able to do more work, to be able to offer more tools. So I do a little bit of advertising on the side. Nobody pays me for it, but I will just say that we need that because we also need to come together here. And again, all our efforts will be based on the vision for a better new world. And this is kind of written someplace in many scriptures and books. And the new world is coming. And I think we are the ushers of that new era. So I recommend that we again look at this from 2 points of view. One is the inner side, the inner movement, the inner work, and the second one is outer external work. They're interconnected. There's no, I would say, saving of the planet without first saving yourself, meaning reconnecting, finding the balance and harmony in oneself, and then at the same time, of course, working externally. There is a yama in niyama in Patanjali Yoga Sutras, which is called tapas, right? And there's another one that's the effort here. And there's another one which is also called shaucha, which is the purity. So this shaucha is the niyama that extends from internal purity to the external purity. Today, perhaps we could expand this idea of external purity in a brilliant way. And today I was just walking by, and I just want to say something. Uh, I was looking at the streets in New York City, and it always kind of surprises me how dirty they are. I think people have such a absence of, no, I wouldn't even say respect, but the love for their own place where they live in, you know? So I don't know in other cities how it is, but it would be nice that the people have nothing to do, just clean the streets, you know? That could be a very good first step. Like some of you do this. I know Sita has organized it many times. I think Dayadevi and other people cleaning of the beach, right? The Long Beach, like picking up the garbage. And apparently even within 2-3 hours, they pick up like a 300-400 pounds of garbage. Can you believe it? That's the first good step to, I would say, preserving nature and of course, self-realization. Now, of course, I have to talk about something because I'm not really my work is primarily internal, but I let these ladies here run a better view of what's happening in the society in connection, of course, with what's within us. First of all, I want to introduce something new today, which is the look at the meaning of the word earth, which really immediately brings up the image of nature, right? So in Sanskrit, we have many words for earth. And each one of them is more beautiful than the others. For example, we can learn this from Indian scriptures that most of these names for the earth and the ocean and everything is highly spiritual. So, for example, the one of the words is Prithvi or Prithvi, which means that which is famous. Can you believe it? That also which is vast in terms of size and it's extended. And then, for example, there's another word which is mahi. So it comes from a root which means to be honored, right? So something to be honored is the earth. Of course, it can also mean that which is big. So when we look at the earth and we try to imagine that the Mother Earth is our body. In the Vedas, you will find a lot of references to creation, to the body. In fact, we know from the esoteric teachings that the body is kind of a holographic expression of everything that takes place in creation, right? So we have 7 chakras represent the 7 worlds, and then 7 worlds like this. It's a complex picture. But if we imagine just for now that our body is the earth, or rather to think of the earth as the body, but to also see that the body of the earth is within our body, if I may say this. Whatever is in the earth is in our body. So according to the esoteric teachings of the East, for example, the air and water circulation that we find in nature finds its equivalent in the form of the heart in a human being. That also has its like I would say a country or whatever the country is, for example, the president represents the heart of the country, but the actual physical heart of us is reflection of the nature overall circulation of air and water. Then we look at, for example, the rainforest. Rainforests are considered to be the lungs of the earth, and that's exactly what our lungs represent. There's a correlation between our lungs and the rainforest. Now, if you think of a liver, for example, the liver of the earth is mountains, volcanoes, seismic activities. So it's a very deep energetic movement inside. So that is the liver in a human being. Then if we think of, for example, like large intestines or something like this, that would be oceans, seas like that. Or if we think of kidneys, the kidneys represent like a salt deposits, underground rivers, water table. So like this, bladder looks like some kind of a reservoir. So in nature, the bladder is found as springs, reservoirs, water, underground water, and everything. So thinking of all this, there's a whole imagery that comes, and then and when we meditate, we could do a meditation like this where we we pray that our body is in harmony and health, but in reality the body can only be in harmony and health for so long as one is the dharma of the virtue sustains it, karma from previous lifetimes, this lifetime, whatever. But in this particular talk, the main emphasis would be that the body finds its balance when it's completely respectful of the same processes that are taking place in the body, the ones that are taking place in nature. So if you want your a large intestine to be in a good condition, you must not pollute the oceans. You see, so like this, all the water things that it refers to water element within us is like what we find. And naturally, as much as there are many deniers of climate changes and everything, these people do not realize that the nature, the lifespan of human beings will decrease dramatically ever so much more with every destruction of nature as we see it. So another thing I wanted to discuss with you is the fact that Mother Nature is Lakshmi. You all know divine mothers and everything. So we have Durga, we have Lakshmi, we have Saraswati. They're all actually one and the same energy of the divine mother. And so the divine mother has taken form of abundancy in the form of Lakshmi. For all of you, you know the Lakshmi looks like a very beautiful, very balanced, and it's, everything if out of her hands are flowing, all kinds of things. And she holds the lotuses, which represent the blossomings. This case, it could be blossoming of nature itself. So what happens is that the Lakshmi represents these factors in the same way as I just said something about the esoteric East, but here she presides over things such as the forest, the lakes, all of the nature, the green color of the vibrancy of grasses, of trees, and everything. That is all Lakshmi. So the presence of Lakshmi is found in food like grains and herbs. In us is found in the form of health. So any preservation of life is Lakshmi. And then more specifically, again, we could just go and specify where Lakshmi is in parks and flower gardens and, all kinds of places like this, oceans, right? So what happens is that there's something which is called Alakshmi. So Lakshmihi and Alakshmihi. Negates the abundance. So it is said that the greatest representation for us after the mother nature, Lakshmi is found in the form of mother or in the form of woman. Any woman is Lakshmi, any mother is Lakshmi, and nature is Lakshmi. The respect for these three is simultaneous and the same. You cannot have one and not have one for another. So this is what's said in the scriptures. So if anybody displeases Lakshmi, I'm not saying displeases wife exactly, but if somebody displeases Lakshmi, meaning creates destruction of her form, like nature itself, either a woman or mother or everything, he or she will be experiencing Lakshmi, he, which is the word for poverty. So this is something I wanted to just introduce. I'll say a few more things later on, but I want to pass on an invisible microphone to Mahadevi, Brett, and then back to Sita, and then we'll see where we are. Om.
Om Prem. You know, I'm the pragmatist in this group, and it's. I was talking to Premji today about the fact that I'm going to see my mother. You know, we're talking about mothers, right? So I'm going to see my 86-year-old mother next week, and she doesn't live nearby. She lives in a different city, and as a result of that, I have to fly on a plane. Right? I could drive. I've driven before. It's about 14 hours to drive. So I could have driven, but that would require me to, you know, spend more money, stay in a hotel, do all of that stuff. And when I get to the airport, I'm going to have to rent a car because there's no public transportation from the airport to where she lives. And it seems to me that there's always a trade-off between the things we love and then, you know, the concepts of polluting the earth, right? So if I was making a salad today, as I also said to Prem, I was making a salad today, and so I go to the grocery store and all the vegetables are wrapped up in plastic. I mean, everything is wrapped up. So I don't want to, you know, I want to eat a lot of vegetables, right? So now how do we begin to change these types of little things in our life? Because it's going to be very difficult to change the viewpoints of people that are in complete denial. So for instance, this morning, I was walking very early in the morning. I'm very fortunate to live near Central Park, and I was going to walk in the park, and the garbage guys were picking up the garbage. And one of the garbage bags broke, and the garbage man, left all the garbage right on the street. You know, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, like there's no way, to Prem's point, the streets are dirty, and there's no way, this is this man's job, and there's no way I'm going to be able to go up to him and say, hey, you know, pick up the garbage. That's your job. I mean, that would be very confrontational and would result in some sort of less than nonviolent action. So we have to start with ourselves, right? And we have to start little tiny things. So for instance, last year I decided, you know, I love iced coffee. And last year I decided, you know, I'm a true New Yorker. I even say it like iced coffee. And I decided last year I wasn't going to buy iced coffee anymore outside of, because it's a straw, it's a plastic cup, it's a, you know, it's a total waste of time. So now I always make my own iced coffee. And that's one little way of doing it. Or splitting up groceries maybe with my daughter so that we can buy groceries and then she'll come over here and we can split them as opposed to both of us buying more plastic. And I think we have to start looking at these little tiny ways. I mean, I know there's big problems. There's no question that there's big problems. But we each individually have to take responsibility and look at little ways that we can begin to just change our life in those ways. And what I've found over all of these years of practicing yoga is that it's best to start little by little. It's best to, you know, just do something every day repetitively, and then you can add something. But if you decide, okay, I'm all of a sudden going to change all of my habits, that's not going to work. So you have to work on them like little by little and create little new ways of doing it. And so, you know, I'll begin to think about these things in different ways. We certainly need more places for people to be able to buy fresh groceries and green markets. We need to be involved politically in our community boards and with our political committees if we can. And I take that work very seriously as well. So I'm going to end with that because it's very hard for me to preach. I'm not really a preachy type of person, but I do believe that each one of us can begin to make these little changes, and then other people will see them. And then when other people see them and you say to them, well, now I'm doing this, or now I'm doing that, or I'm recycling this, or I'm, you know, doing something a little different. And then people will say, well, I can do that too, right? You want people to say to you, I can do that too. Give them something little. Okay. Anyway, with that, I'll turn it over to Sita and we'll continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. I really love the practical tips that you have shared with us this evening. Our solar system is like this really harsh and like brutal place, and there's lots of solar radiation, and it's unimaginably cold. Yet over billions of years, life has shown us the miraculous ability to adapt and to evolve and to flourish on this living planet that we call Earth, that's located in the corner of the Milky Way. And as human beings, right, we have long been a part of that miracle. For most of our history in most environments, we've woven ourselves into the fabric of lives that were very thoughtful, very creative, and generative to our system as a whole. And it's only recently in our deep story of humanity that we've shifted from one of like interdependence and being very connected with nature to one of domination. And I think that's like where the root of our problems exist, is that we feel that we own her instead of being in an interdependent kind relationship with her. And with this like dominance energy comes just like this cascade of violence and inequality and exploitation of resources. And we all like have the iced coffees and have, you know, buy the things with plastics. And it's, I don't want to say it's unavoidable, but I feel like who we have to hold responsible for this is the companies that are wrapping their foods in plastics to begin with, like Coca-Cola, for instance. I saw that Leela had posted something today, is like the #1 producer of plastics in the entire world. So if we can not support companies like this and kind of, they look to us to say, you need to recycle, and we should look back to them and say, you shouldn't be producing as much plastic. And if you are producing this much plastic, you should be held accountable to how it's going to be recycled. Because the issue with recycling is that we have so much more plastic than could ever fit into a recycling plant. So, I mean, I've spoken to my local recycling pickup person in Long Beach, and they have let me know that it's kind of like a sham, that there's no room at the plant anymore for all of this plastic. And if whatever room there is, it's actually shipped overseas to be dealt with over there. So it's just going into landfills. So recycling isn't necessarily the solution to the problem. I think like what Brett is saying also is that we really need to eliminate having to purchase things with plastic in the first place by attending farmers markets and then really starting to grow our own food. I think that's like the most, let's say, rebellious thing that we can do during these times, to like step away from the societal, you know, norms and come back home to nature. And just as like yoga practitioners, we know that we are nature herself. And by coming home to nature, we're coming home to ourselves. And because we have knowledge of this relationship, we must become like the caretakers of nature. So it's like our duty now, and it's also a beautiful invitation to begin to lovingly weave our communities back into the fabric of life. And this is a pivotal moment for our species. I know Leela can drop some really insane scientific facts here about how much longer we have before it's irreversible. So if you like, Leela, you could say that, or you could even type it in the chat. Just to kind of end, I do have some practical tips, just like from my heart, of ways that we can reintegrate ourselves with nature, from our diets to our hobbies, to our homes, to our spiritual practices, to what we're wearing on our bodies, and to what we do for a living. One of the tips I have is to establish rituals. So to go outside and see the sunrise or sunset and practice sun gazing, which will fill you with lots of prana. It's kind of like a tratak exercise. When the sun is not so powerful, but it's just going down, it can fill you with so much energy and really connect you to the source of life, which is that light. And then taking your shoes off and earthing in the grass or barefoot on the sand at the beach, and to allow your body to absorb the negative healing ions that naturally emanate from the Earth's energy field, which have been proven to reduce inflammation and also to boost your immune system. And then this is one that Premji had taught me, so I'm going to share it with them. But he had said one day during a satsang that we need to talk to the elements as if they were like our friends, and say hello to them every day, and to thank them as we step outside into the natural world, talking to the sunlight and talking to the wind, and saying really sweet little sentences to the earth. Thank you for supporting me. And just coming up with your own poetic little love poems to the earth will help you to establish and rekindle your relationship with her. Another one I have is to start to establish sacred mealtime rituals, such as gardening or growing your own food. This is the best way I find, and I feel that we need to cultivate a deeper relationship with nature, because it has been shown that plants will grow specifically for its gardener. So the plants want to give you the nutrients and the medicine that you need. So by growing your own plants, the plants are growing for you. And two of the same plants grown in the same soil can produce totally different ratios of minerals and vitamins depending on who their caretaker is. So they're so intelligent. The earth wants to see you be very healthy, and she wants to see you flourish. And if you can't grow your own food, what you can do is you can hold an apple in your hand for 1 minute before you eat it, and just let it sync up with your frequency. Because when you're grateful for the apple, and you're grateful for the earth for having grown your food, and for the farmer who harvested it, and for the market who sold it, you're not only going to digest the apple better, but you're going to receive more nutrients from it than you would had you just like unconsciously consumed your meal. And then the next one I have a couple more, but one of them is to adopt a pet. because I had found I was spending so much time inside, and then I got this little puppy, and he wants to go out all of the time, and he has to go out many times a day. And when it's like 10:30 at night, the last thing that I want to do is put my jacket on and put my shoes on and take him out. But then once I do, I'm so grateful because I see the beautiful moon and I see the cosmos, and I'm walking, getting some fresh air. So I find myself walking a lot more in nature because I have this little animal. And I know there's lots of animals who need to be adopted out there. So if you have the space and the patience, that can help you reintegrate with nature. And you know, you have to go splash in the puddles when it's raining, and you really get a chance to reconnect. And then you could just, you know, plan trips, plan weekend hikes, go take the train out to Long Beach to go swimming in the summertime. Swimming in the ocean is one of the most grounding and healing activities that you can do. And maybe try camping and turning your cell phone off completely, and going to bed with the setting sun and rising at dawn. These are things that I think can really help us to reconnect and rekindle that loving bond with nature. So thank you for listening. I'll hand it back over to Premji.
Thank you. This is really wonderful. So your puppy has become your little Guruji, teaching you how to connect with nature. That's good. So I, as you know, my focus is like this: inner work and outer work. Sometimes we can talk more about inner work. Sometimes we talk about more outer work. But we need to have a harmony between the two. In fact, the victory over this grand task, you know, connecting with nature and really being successfully protecting the nature, we need to first build this inner harmony. I think it really depends on how our mind works, in fact. The problem that I think is the primary is that the human beings been disconnected from their own self. They're connected also from nature. And human beings no longer hold anything sacred, right? So they've lost this sense of worship, which Sita just mentioned very nicely. And this is the really cause of decline. So if we want to help the environment, we need to have the worshipful element or attitude. So that's what Sita was just mentioning. Connection with the elements should not be an occasional thing, or even if you express it in a form of some prayer in your words, but it should be something we do daily. We daily actually remind ourselves that we need to connect with nature, especially because we sit so many hours in front of the machines nowadays. So it's like almost a huge contradiction that even though we talk about wanting to be in nature, we're kind of tied to the machines. So that paradigm, that the difficult paradigm, has to be broken. So the thing is that one cannot really truly respect nature or even other humans, if we're talking about the equality and everything, unless we give some form of a recognition or credence within ourselves to something greater. And what is that which is greater? We know it from a spiritual point of view. That is God, divine, anything you want to call it. So only when you're able to establish that relationship, to cultivate that connection, that's to have that sacred feeling for something, or rather a greater being within yourself, is that you're going to have a naturally an immediate and a spontaneous deeper relationship with nature. But sometimes for people seems to be easier to nowadays go the other way around, showing the respect for nature, and then feeling that there is really something that embodies nature and ourselves equally, and that is higher than even the nature that we see or even our bodies that we see. You see, the love for nature that is kind of a part of the ancient world and many of the traditions, even American Native Indian, it was actually the result of their connection with the divine. It wasn't an exclusive relationship they had with nature and they were like kind of more cool and they were camping outside or anything like that. No, they had the first connection with the, you know, great spirit, you can say divine, and then the nature was naturally the greatest manifestation of it. Again, my more abstract approach to this for today, it will say that we have to think that nature is like consciousness. It's not something that is just made up of certain forms and okay, there are certain processes, they're not purely chemical in nature, but the cosmic consciousness really means knowledge. So we talk about intelligence. There's an intelligence in nature which is quite unbelievable. For example, if you think that an ant works within a community and building all kinds of architectural phenomenal things, little ants, which we cannot imitate, right? So imagine all these processes are inherent in nature. Imagine that all these processes in nature, in fact, are taking place simultaneously and with great precision and actually effortlessly, you know. So if you look at your own body, you know, doesn't really doesn't this concept of the body, how it's formed, evade or escape even the greatest imagination of any human being? So I always take the body as my own kind of a little meditation to think about the first way to respect the nature, because you know you have to carry this bag with you all day long, and the bag is kind of intelligent and there's a lot of things are going on. But everywhere you look, in every inch of creation, we see that presence. We see that abidance of something, the greatness of which we cannot even fathom. And that the appreciation of that is only cultivated through spiritual methods. You know, there are people who respect nature, but they may not be spiritual. You know, we're still lacking something. I'm not saying that this is not good or anything, but you have to look at the nature as the most visible manifestation of God and as a way also of learning about God. For example, if people if people nowadays choose not to want to believe in traditional forms of, you know, of God, such as Jesus, Buddha, and everything, they may or they should start to worship or see the nature herself as the visible incarnation or manifestation of God, and it is to be worshipped. If we remember this, no problem. And you see, in India, they knew that. So every tree has a divine name. Every river has a divine name. Every mountain is called, you know, Arunachala, is Lord Shiva's mountain, something like that. So the secret is this, that the nature is not just a commodity. It's not something that supports us. In fact, the nature itself gives countless riches to us, provided there's only one important principle here that we have to develop, and then everything will be fine, and that is to respect it. As Sita and me were talking today, the nature doesn't need manipulation or control of humans to help it heal. We're the most arrogant people that we think, oh, we will stop the climatic changes. All we need to do is to stop ourselves from being like a, you know, ridiculously like, you know, indisciplined children that they're just going around and setting a fire everywhere. The nature has inherent self-resetting system. It's like, you know, when you're sick, all you need to do is stop eating, then you see what the body does. Purifies something, heals another thing. All you have to do, or reduce your quantity of food, or, you know, behave basically. So this is the idea. If we do not respect the nature, what the nature does, first of all, not just it withdraws the abundance. We're struggling for air, we're struggling for water. Isn't that the case today? I mean, it's amazing that the modern science doesn't see this as a total clear perception of a problem. Is that even though the science is there to solve problems rather to recognize the laws that run this creation, you know, the science doesn't say, oh, people, the most important thing for you is to have clean water, clean earth, clean vegetables, whatever, everything clean, clean, clean. So to say this is that people may say, well, I don't care what nature does, right? But the nature will retaliate. What is the purpose of her retaliation? Is to teach us a lesson to rediscipline ourselves. It's like when you overeat, you have a stomach pain. So that is your nature's retaliation against your greed over food, right? So it is ultimately the way to heal us, but it comes in a very powerful way. So when we realize, then what happens is that we'll see we have no choice but to understand and change our attitude, which of course now is expressed in several ways. One, lack of intelligence. Second, lack of our love. We have no love. We don't love for anybody, needless to say, for nature, right? This is what's happening. You think that these racial problems and equality problems will be there if there was really some love. But you can also not separate love from one another, love from nature, love for God. It's all interconnected. So we have that lack of intelligence, lack of love, lack of will, also lack of everything. Why lack of intelligence? Because we are silly enough to not to refuse to study the laws of dharma that govern nature. We don't want to study them. You have to study them, and they won't teach you in the educational system. You all have to do is this, as Sita said, you go in the morning, you observe the sunrise, and you communicate to the sun, not just, take a photo of it and put it on a Facebook, but really learn to communicate. Even your language may not be perfect to you, nevertheless, the communication is there. What about our heart connection? Well, because if we really had heart, if we humanity, we think we have heart, right? We have love. We don't. Why? Look at how many beings, how many animals are tortured daily, destroyed in the name of what? We'll say, oh, we need to eat. It's not true. You're just destroying completely mindlessly the whole thing. And of course, there's no will either. Because we're only interested in our comfort, in our pleasure, and all these things. So, there's anyway, more to be said. I'm just going to use one or two sentences of Swami Shivananda to illustrate how to meditate on nature. He would say like this: if you admire a lamp, a table lamp, I have a fancy table lamp here from Italy, right? So I've already broken some dharmic laws because I bought something that comes from another country. You see, he says, you're admiring this lamp. Why have you learned to admire the sun, the glorious sun that sheds the light for the whole world, entire world? We admire a little perfume, some kind of little thing. He says, what about the fragrance of rose and jasmine? We don't have it here exactly because we live in this capital, in the cities. We love the paintings and artists and everything, but it says, what about the painting of the creator? This beautiful creation. So he says, people worship somebody who made a beautiful swimming pool. What about your oceans and lakes and rivers, which are the true architecture of this creation? So like this, he chases us to think. I will just complete now by saying a couple of things. One, for the proper reconnection with nature, we need to reevaluate a very important difference between need and desire. And we are going to see here the problem that is greed, right? As one of my teachers said, there's enough of everything for every person's needs, but there's not enough even for a single person's greed. So this is how the greed is like a fire that doesn't ever slow down. So here are some ideas that I think. One, you have to reduce your own desires. That's going to be the biggest battle, in fact. And that's what feeds this enormous chaotic movement in the world. From Amazon to plastic bags to plastic this, plastic, and you realize if you want to have a self-sustained life, then you will need community. Then you need to cook more for each other. Then you need to come together. In our modern family, we have, our parents are living in Las Vegas. This one, people somewhere else. My brother is 5,000 miles away from here. It's very difficult if you want to see some of these people. So in the future, families should live close to one another. As much as they may be impossible sometimes to have them around, and for them to have you around, this is the way to go. Slowing down is the next thing. Sita was supposed to talk about this. I think, I feel for myself, this is what coronavirus taught me. I myself am eliminating extra things from my day because I need to create space. If you don't have a create space, you don't have a circulation. If you fill up your room with all kinds of furniture and everything, where can you move? So if your day is filled with all kinds of activities and desires and everything, how are you going to do it? So my suggestion is slowing down, think about this, and try to do, as a little meditation, try to do all the right things from the eco-yoga point of view. From morning you wake up to the evening, and you will run into some problems. Then you have to talk to Leela, you have to talk to Sita, you have to talk to Mahadevi, you have to do this. So my suggestion is to learn to starve the production process of bad products. So by choosing not to be part of it, whatever that may mean, you all know it is. So this is my story for today. I could tell you more about the story, but there's a lot more to be said. Here we have Sita and Brett. I hope we can still continue for a few more minutes, opening it up for some little chat, whatever you want. Om. Who is next?
I didn't realize I was unmuted, but I guess I will speak to, one second, pin. I'll speak to the slowing down. Yeah, I think we were all we're just not attuned with nature's pace. And in order for nature to heal herself, we all need to stop living our lives as fast as we are. And even, the people who are, healers and yoga practitioners and teachers, and they're supposed to be, representations of vitality and well-being and harmony. Like Premji is saying, if you fill up your schedule with so many things, there's no space. That is so beautifully said, for circulation, for things to move. So I was running my yoga center at 150 miles an hour. And then coronavirus hit, and I realized that that was not sustainable for me, for my health, for nature. And I'm just very grateful for the pause that I had to be able to put everything down and to just have my nervous system kind of be reacclimated. So I think it's imperative for all of us to take that with us as we move forward into our lives post, we're still in it, but as we move forward out of this experience, is to have spaces in our day for decompression, spaces in our day to connect with nature, spaces to talk to nature as God, as Prem was saying, as an aspect of the divine, and to pray for her healing, which is very interconnected with our healing. So yeah, I just wanted to say, everybody, just slow down. Thank you.
Mahadevi, you want to say a few words?
I would just add to the consumeristic slowdown in that I think we all have to be extraordinarily careful about the products we buy and why we buy them and how often we buy them. And I believe that all of this is it's necessary for us to take political stands and become more involved in our communities and become more involved in showing people how this can work. As examples, I don't think that, like I said before, I think it's very difficult to say to somebody, don't buy that. Don't buy that Coca-Cola. I mean, I don't drink Coca-Cola, but to say, to say to somebody, don't buy that Coca-Cola, right? But if we lead by example, by not purchasing those products, by changing our diets, by being healthy, people will naturally gravitate towards those people that are healthy, those people that have a lifestyle that they want to emulate. And this is our responsibility. And we also have a responsibility to make these choices available to more people, because there are so many people where the choice is the choice not to be in nature, right? Not to the choice that's been made for them. So I'll give you an example. My daughter is a soon-to-be graduated landscape architect, I'm proud to say, the mother of a landscape architect. And her thesis, her master's thesis, is on Birmingham, Alabama. And in Birmingham, Alabama, Frederick Law Olmsted, who designed Central Park, designed a park system for the city of Birmingham. And the city voted down that park system because too many African-American families would have access to the park system. And it was voted down. And so now you have a whole community that does not have access to parks and recreation and to be in nature when they're in a center city. And we have to be aware of these things and have to work towards those things from a political standpoint as well. So I would just add that's the way that I see, at least for me, that I can become more involved, that I can make sure that things change, and talk to candidates about their views about climate change, talk to candidates about their views about outdoor spaces, what we can all do, and support them when we can. Be very vocal in that support, as well as, we don't need 90% of what we buy. So being very, very careful about what we purchase. So thank you all for the opportunity to talk about all this stuff. And I will turn it back over to Sita. Thank you.
Thank you, Britt. I wanted to say that in the Eco Yoga Life app, we'll be leading some challenges there that can hold you accountable for what you are purchasing, and kind of like hold your hand as you make these vows and commitments to yourself and to nature to level up your lifestyle. So you can, it's a free app, and you just kind of plug in your name, and then you're part of this wonderful community. And we will be doing challenges on conscious consumerism, where we have to be mindful before we, put anything into our mouths, before we pump gas, because like Leela, has said to me so many times, that everything we buy, everything that's in our home, in our life, in our car, in the material world, inanimate and animate, is from the Mother Earth. It is her, and she has very limited now resources. So happy Earth Day, everyone. And just in case Premji would like to say anything else, and then we maybe could open it up to share about how you guys are all moving forward to reestablish your connection with nature. We would love to hear from you.
I want to just first to say I'm very grateful to the organizers as well as to all of you present. I think we all sharing the same thoughts, and each one of us is just expressing probably what's in other people's hearts in different ways, and maybe we won't hear everything what's in everybody's heart. But I really appreciate these meetings. It gives me more incentive to take care of my own, life internally, what I can do. And I've already seen a great progress with coronavirus, what I mentioned.